Hey everyone, this is the MCAT Guru. In today's video, I want to discuss how to simply break down science passages, and I want to put the emphasis on simply. I mentioned in my introductory video that I think far too many MCAT prep videos and companies complicate the MCAT much more than is needed. My approach will help you quickly get through the passage while simultaneously helping you find the information you need to answer every question correctly. I want to keep most of my videos relatively short, but today's video will need to be a little bit longer simply because breaking down passages takes some time. Before I get to an example passage, I want to talk about generally what type of information to focus on while reading a passage. Typically, there are two categories of information: basic science and information unique to the passage. Basic science are concepts from the AAMC topic list of required background information to take the MCAT. Examples include antibodies, protein structure, amino acids, enthalpy, and molecular geometry. These are the concepts that you recognize from your content review and from the classes that you took prior to taking the MCAT. Passage information is information unique to the passage that you do not need to have a prior knowledge of. Examples include the hypothesis of the passage, stated results, experimental design, acronyms of proteins and other things that you're not familiar with, figure information, and so on and so forth. When you first start studying, I highly recommend drawing this table and filling in information into these two categories from the passages that you are practicing on. This will help train your brain on what type of information you need to look for when doing a passage. Over time, you'll become good enough at recognizing the information and remembering it that you won't need to draw this chart out anymore. Remember, keep it simple. You don't need to write down everything in the passage or write a paragraph about what you are writing down. The usefulness of this chart will become a lot more clear in my next video about how to approach questions in the science sections. I now want to put this chart into action and show you how to break down this passage and fill out this chart. Before I start though, I want to note that all the passages I use in my videos, I purchased, or I even wrote the questions myself from peer-reviewed articles. I do not condone or encourage getting questions and passages illegally. My approach to tackling passages is slightly different than a lot of the traditional methods out there. When I read, I focus a lot more on remembering where to find information rather than trying to memorize it all on my first read through. Honestly, it is not realistic to expect to remember everything you'd read when you are doing so many passages in a row under time conditions. Instead, I focus on remembering where key information is talked about in the passage so that I can quickly refer back to the appropriate paragraph if a question asks about it. Not knowing how to answer a question and not remembering where the passage talked about it is an enormous time killer. I'm not going to read through this passage right now as if I was with one of my students to demonstrate how to digest information found in this science passage. Just a few notes before I start. My first time through a passage, I do not intently analyze graphs, figures, and tables. I look at the axes and make sure I understand what types of information is found there so I can know if I need to refer back to it in a question, but I do not waste a lot of time on it. I do this for a few reasons. First, not every passage asks about figures, so you don't want to waste time analyzing a figure that won't get asked about. Second, questions provide context, so when you see a question, you will know exactly what you were looking for and not waste precious time. All right, so let's start at the beginning of this passage. Celecoxib, compound 1, is an anti-inflammatory drug that decreases the synthesis of inflammatory mediators by specific inhibition of enzyme cyclooxygenase 2, or COX-2. More recently, compound 1 has been reported to decrease the risk of developing colorectal cancer in humans due to these anti-inflammatory properties. Compound 1 is eliminated from the body and the urine following metabolism by the enzyme cytochrome P450-2C9. a hemoprotein involved in the processing of many therapeutic drugs. So it's worth noting that most first paragraphs in science passages are just general background information. Again, the information that's not required for you to know for the MCAT. So at the end of each paragraph, I stop and I summarize what I just read and think to myself, if a question asks about this information, I come back to this paragraph. So in this case, I would say, okay, if they're asking about COX-2 and these enzymes, this background information, I can come back to paragraph 1. Now my chart, I'd probably put cancer drug, celecoxib, which is compound 1. Now, I'm going to go down to figure 1 now. This is the next thing. So again, kind of like I said, I don't spend a lot of time on the figures, but I'm just going to generally look at it so I know what types of information, if I need to come back to it. I see it's converting from compound 1 to compound 2. And since it's a chemistry passage, I could be asked about chemical structures and mechanisms. So making that note that the structures are here. And I'm just generally seeing that I have some large hydrophobic groups. And I have some polar groups. So again, just general information that I've identified here. And that's really it. Now I'm going to move on. In addition to the wild type enzyme CYP2C9*1, I know known point mutations, within the CYP2C9 gene have given rise to allelic variants in this enzyme in the human population. So again, I see point mutations, I'm immediately thinking, okay, I'm going to write point mutations down. And honestly, in terms of passive information, it'd be a good idea to write, figure 1. I have compound 1, 2. So I can refer back to that in a minute. Anyway, two specific variants, CYP2C9*2 and CYP2C9*3, are associated with decreased metabolism and elimination of many therapeutic drugs, which affects dosage protocols and increases potential for side effects. Table 1 shows the reaction kinetics of 3 forms of CYP2C9 towards compounds 1. So again, here they're kind of giving some results, and what they're studying is these mutations. Basically, the results is mutations equals decreased efficacy. So I'm going to make that mental note. Again, a lot of information in paragraph 2. Really, all I'm going to say to myself is, if they ask about these mutations and their effects, I can come back here. I've already forgotten some of the names of these things and some of their exact effects, and that's okay because I can come back to it if a question asks about it. So now I'm just going to skim table 1. And I see kind of on the axes, I have the enzyme substitution, and I see Km and Vmax. Now, immediately, whenever I see Km and Vmax, I think Michaelis, Menten kinetics. That is a huge, high-yield topic, frequently found in MCAT questions. And I'm going to say, table 1, I have my Michaelis-Menten data. So I know to come back here if they ask about Vmax and Km. All right, compound 1 is known to increase the rate of adverse drug side effects in humans when administered with anticoagulant warfarin due to inhibition of the CYP2C9 mediated processing of warfarin. So they mentioned inhibition, so I know there could be a Michaelis-Menten inhibition question. And again, if I just am summarizing this paragraph, compound 1 plus warfarin is a bad thing. And I'm just going to skim figure 2. I have a Lineweaver-Burke plot. And I could write over here, figure 2, LB plot. So at this point, I feel confident that I've identified all of the key concepts in this passage they're going to be asked about in a question. Really, this is it. This was very simple. I haven't memorized a ton of information. It was quick and it was efficient. Now, to see how this approach makes answering questions much easier, go ahead and watch my next video. I hope you found this video informative and useful. If you liked it, go ahead and click the like button and subscribe to my channel for more awesome content. If you have any recommendations on future videos, such as topics or hard passages, you can reach me at themcatguru@gmail.com.